The Pope and Young Club wants to welcome you as we rally together to ensure our bow hunting opportunities for today and tomorrow. You've come to the podcast that believes in preserving, protecting, and promoting the passion for bow hunting. Join us as we strive to be the voice of today's bow hunter. This is the Pope and Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast. This is Jason Roundsville. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dylan Ray, and we have a whole gallery for your viewing and listening pleasure tonight. We have the Butcher Buck. We also have Brian Butcher, the guy that connected with the Butcher Buck. We have Luke Buxton and Clint Pope. Guys, welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, you know, I got to meet you guys just a couple weeks ago in Reno, and I have to say it was an absolute treat because you guys literally walked up and just said, "Hey, we listen to the podcast." So obviously, you're three of my favorite people at convention right there.
Three of the four listeners right there, Jason.
Yeah, we had, and the other guy was in the room, so we had everybody right there. But no, that was a lot of fun, and so. I have to tell this story because you guys set me up pretty good on our introduction. So you guys mind if I tell the story, and if I get it wrong, you jump in and let me know where.
Well, we will.
We were testing you, and you passed with flying colors.
Oh man, yeah. So anyway, we're at convention. I'm sitting there, and these guys walk up, and they're like, "Hey, are you Jason?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "We listen to your podcast." I'm like, "Man, thank you so much. I appreciate it." I said, "The other guy that listens right on the other side of the room," and kind of had some fun with it. And then we just happened to be standing by the whitetail display, which was just insane. I mean, have you guys have been around a lot of whitetails. Have you ever seen anything that big and that many?
No, not at all. The whole display was magnificent.
Yeah, it was just impressive. So cool. We just happened, looking back, it might have been better if we'd been standing by the elk or the caribou or something. But at the time, we're standing by these monster whitetails, and
we were just like,
yeah. So we're just all in awe. I'm sitting here and I'm like, which one would you take if you could pick one? Which one would you pick? And we've got Brian's buck there. We've got Luke Brewster's, buck, which is also a tremendous trophy, as well as some typicals. And I think one of you guys even said, "Man, you'd have to consider that Brewster buck." And and it was just like 6 feet from yours. And so we're kind of looking at that. And I said, what about one of these big typicals? Because they're just so cool. And then Brian points at that one. He says, "I'd pick that one." And I turned to him and I opened my mouth fully and inserted my foot. And I said, "Really?" I said, "Do you have any idea how much grief that cost my measures?" And then somebody else says, "Hey, that's Brian Butcher." So does that do it justice? I mean, is that pretty close, guys?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'll be the first one to say that I think my buck might have been the last one to pick out of that display. But yeah, I thought, point at that and see what other people's reactions are. See where it goes.
I'm just glad I didn't say something bad, but because I said something, that thing, like I can see somebody. Yeah, what? You take that, really? No, it's at least I was honest. I was like, man, that caused our measures some serious grief. When I saw the final scores after panel, and that all three, the original and the two panel measurements, I don't think people realize what it takes to score something like that. I mean, we had two different panels of three of the best measures in the world. I mean, these guys are as good as it gets. They measure for us. They measure for BNC. They're just the top of the top. And it took a team of three of those 8 hours each to do that buck. And I mean, they had more blue masking tape on that thing. I mean, than the last house I saw painted. It was just crazy. and all three measurements were within like 6/8 or so. I mean, it was
I think
just something.
it was 3/8, but don't
Was
quote
it
me. I think it was 3/8 because I watched the guys over there, and they I mean, it was the most intense thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. You would have thought performing brain surgery.
You guys are forgetting the fact that Ken Witt was the original scorer, and so it was a little bit unique in the sense that we had a legitimate panel score at the first time.
Yeah.
So it just lent a little credibility.
That's like saying, you know what, we're gonna play a little baseball. How about we'll just lead off with Babe Ruth. That's like getting Ken Witt to score your buck. I mean, that's starting at the top right there. So
there was a lot of people that questioned things, and then when they heard his name, they were like, "Oh, it's legit. It's
absolutely
legit." If he did it,
well, it's just when you hear about a 320-inch buck, something pops to your mind, and I think in a lot of people's minds, something more like the Brewster buck pops into your mind. But then here's this, absolutely, which I read some stuff online, and it kind of irritated me a little bit because they're like, well, that's not really how it's meant to be, and I'm like, dude, 300, what'd that end up with? 320.
321 and 3/8 was the net, and the gross was 343 and 4/8. And I mean, you look at it here, and you don't even see the full picture because you got to tilt that thing around, and it some people call it like coral or a bloomin' onion in the sense that who knows what happened to it, but it definitely blew up.
I got to lay my hands on that thing, and it is, for anybody that doesn't think that's one hell of a trophy, let me just tell you, you're wrong. That thing is impressive. I mean, it doesn't have the 200-inch frame that you think of with these monster bucks, but that is one impressive trophy. It really is, and it's so unique. I mean, what else out there is even like that?
It's just a good reminder of what nature can produce, I think.
Yeah.
It isn't the Brewster buck, and I mean, the Brewster buck is magnificent, and it's it's what you think of when you think of the world record Pope and Young non-typical whitetail. And Luke's a great guy, but yeah, I mean, mine isn't that, and I get that. It's kind of interesting because I think because it is so unique, it for good or bad, it definitely gets people talking about it.
Yeah, and it's I'd heard about it, and I just never had a chance to meet you until obviously you guys set me up like that. But it was that was fun. I'll tell you, that was great. I had a lot of fun meeting you guys, and so I've been looking forward since that day. I've been looking forward to this podcast. I'm like, we're gonna have some fun on this one. So, guys, I just got to ask, tell us about the hunt. Did you know this buck was in there? Did you know you were looking for this? And I mean, did you think it was 300 inches?
No, absolutely not to any of those things. And I'll be the first one to say I'm probably the luckiest guy on the planet, or at least luckiest whitetail hunter. I had no clue the deer was there. Everything was just pure luck. And, if you go back to kind of the beginning of this story, we had gone out there, I believe it was October 2nd, and it was one of those trips out. It was an evening, probably after work. And we had no real plans other than just trying to get ready for the season. And we'd moved a stand over, not very far, but probably moved it over 30 yards. And we thought we'd sit out, all three of us, in different spots, just kind of an observation hunt. And it ended up raining that night. But anyway, we got a few cameras out and got prepared. And in the meantime, our gear junkie had a plastic tote with some calls in it that somehow fell out of the four-wheeler. And so if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been pressuring my wife to get back out there, and because Clint wanted to go back out there and find those calls. And anyway, it was a Friday afternoon, and we had a cold front coming in, and it wasn't terribly cold, but in October, I think it was going to drop down into the high 40s at the lowest. But we had gone in there, and we found his calls, and my plans were to hunt over in a draw where some acorns were dropping. And after we found his calls, we go over there, and some cattle had got out of the fence. So again, just one of those things of pure luck, and didn't think much about it. And since we were out there, we went over and we trimmed out some shooting lanes in the stand that we had just moved the week before. And so Clint and I are out there trimming shooting lanes, and I got to give him a hand in the sense that
and you busted deer going in.
Yeah, busted deer going in, and Clint's a nice enough guy that he let me go in and climb in that stand and point my finger in a lot of different places. But
cut that.
Yeah,
cut that. Yeah, that's got
yeah,
good at
that's
that.
a good line.
Yeah.
Just point.
Clearly, I'm good at that. I would say. So we got those.
Every work crew needs a supervisor. I'm telling you.
Yes, I'll put my hand up for that.
Open the gate. Cut the line.
You'd think I rolled in there in a limousine, but so we trim out.
That's next year. Next year it's a limousine. You're not gonna have to get gates. You're like, dude, I got a 320. I want you to get the gate and trim that limb right there and bring me a Snickers bar.
I don't feel bad doing it anymore.
Yeah, we don't feel so bad doing it.
Yeah. Before the 320, it was we'd get a little upset, but now it's like, all righty, he's the butcher buck. We'll go ahead and open that gate.
It's awesome.
So anyway, we got those limbs, the shooting lanes trimmed up, and we just kind of dragged the limbs out of the way and go back to the four-wheeler. Clint had to go back. He was more worried about a softball tournament of some sort. And so he left, and I just climbed back up into that tree, in the stand where we had just trimmed those shooting lanes. And it wasn't but 20 minutes later, I had one buck come in, and he hung around for probably 35 minutes. And he was actually eating some of the leaves off of the limbs that we had just trimmed down. You know how deer will do. They'll clean everything off within reach.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get in there and you trim some new limbs down. It's a new buffet for them. But I took a couple of videos of that deer, and I mean, it wasn't, I think it was 5:55. That buck had walked off, and I just let him go. And it was probably within about 5 minutes, I had two more bucks come working towards me from a different direction and just walking at me. And as you can imagine, I mean, you look at that, the first thought is, he's got a bunch of shrubs stuck up in his antlers. He's been making some rubs, things like that. But,
like an oak tree and maybe a pine or something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyway, I mean, again, just as lucky as can be, this deer comes in like he's on a rope. He heads north and just turns broadside for me at 25 yards. And, he got a little closer. I felt like it was all antlers, but just still clueless as far as what he was. And took that shot. And, man, as soon as I made that shot, I was pumped and started climbing down out of my tree stand, and had to calm myself and wait a little bit. And I probably only waited 5 minutes, but it seemed like a half an hour, and climbed down and had a trail camera set up in that area and kind of jumped in front of that and gave it the pose. This is all before I've walked here. Yeah. And
I can't imagine for the life of me, I just can't imagine any of the three of you guys hamming it up for a camera. I just,
Yeah,
he's sticking his tongue out. It was a pretty wild picture.
Yeah. That's cool. And so Luke, where were you? Clint's at a softball game. Where were you on all this?
Well, that's the thing. I had to be at with my wife. It was the first hunt of the season. I was at a hospital gala, and I talked to Brian about it. And my wife's like, "You can go," and I'm like, "No, it's first hunt of the season. He's just not gonna see anything, He's just gonna." And I told him, I was like, "It's just gonna be an observation hunt. You're just gonna hunt the edges. Don't be pressuring in too far." And my luck, all this goes down.
Yeah. Hey, Dylan, this falls right in with what we talked about even with Steve the other day. Is, hey, you know who never shoots a world record or a monster like this? The guy sitting on the couch. or the guy at the hospital gala,
or the guy playing softball.
or the guy playing softball. None of those guys are out here shooting 320s. I tell you, it's the guy in the tree stand or in the ground blind or stalking. So
I thought if I'm ever going to get some points for the season, now's the time to do it. I can miss the first one, and then, that way, I got one. I got one in the books, a couple.
Yeah.
But
it didn't work that way.
But he ended up coming and picking me up at the gala in my suit and tie, and pulls in there with that thing, and I immediately said, "Honey, I'm out of here," and we went back to my house and celebrated in the garage. So I got to enjoy it.
That's also at the hospital gala. You're sitting there in a suit and a tie, which I'm still trying to get a picture of mentally, and so you're there, suit and tie. All of a sudden, your buddy rolls up. He's got a dead deer in the back of the truck. And the hospital folks, did they give you a strange? Did they say, "You what? You're going to go look at a dead deer? What?" Or do enough of them hunt that they understood the significance of that?
I didn't even give them time to tell them.
Okay.
I was starting to get worried because out there where Brian's place is, there's no service really. And I was texting him, and it was getting dark, and I was starting to get worried. He was out there by himself. So I was kind of getting worried, like it may have happened. And finally, he calls, didn't get any response. And finally, he calls, and he's like, "Did you see the picture?" I'm like, "What picture? Did you see something?" And he's like, "You didn't see it?" I'm like, "No. What happened? Did you see a good one?" He's like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, I'm at the gala." He goes, "Stay there. I'll be right there." So, and then he hangs up, and then he shows up, and I just was like, "Uh-oh." So I went immediately told my wife, "Brian got a giant." I said, "I'll see you at the house." The auction was already over, and so I went out there, and I just was like, "What is that? What is that? Is that an alien? Is that is a freak?"
It
like
is. It's absolutely a freak.
Like nothing you've ever seen before. Like all you could say is just like, "What is that?" Just, that's not a real deer. That's something from Mars.
I'm sitting there with a buddy of mine when I first get the picture, and he's number 7, non-typical Pope and Young.
Oh wow!
And
you've got
I'm
good
sitting there, and I
friends.
show him that picture. And he's like, "What is that?" And I said, "That's exactly what I'm saying. Do you have any idea?" And he's like, "Dude, I don't know what that is." It's like never seen anything like it. And Brian, the first picture he sent was deer laying on the ground in the background, and him bug-eyed. You can see the excitement on his face.
Love it.
What just happened. And a few of my buddies that I was with, I started showing, and they're like, they're big deer hunters, and that's about all we said was, what is that thing? I have never seen anything like it.
It could have just as easily been Flinner Eye, though. So.
Oh yeah, you can. We could be. Me or Luke could be sitting in the middle right now. But
what did you guys just say? I've never heard of a world record being shot from a couch.
I wasn't on a couch, don't it?
It could have been me or Dylan too, and we might have at least been hunting that day instead of at a softball game or wearing a tie. Come on now. That's that right there. I'm sorry, guys. But that's paying your dues. I'm telling you, that's being in the trees. That's being out in the woods where you need to be.
I think we need better friends, because he said that his other friends has number 7. Brian's got number 2. I'm like, either his friends get lucky because of him. I'm like, man, we need to hang out more.
I know. Yeah. I'm not sure how that works. I don't have any friends in the top 10.
I know.
Just other than folks that I've met through Pope and Young. So
hey, come down
I guess
to Wellington.
In that case, I do.
Come down to Wellington. You can trim my lanes for me, and then you can go to a softball tournament, and I'll hunt.
You got it. It's season, right? You got a deal. Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's a real future in lane trimming for this guy. I feel it.
Well, the first day, Brian said, "Man, you got to make a." I trim the lanes for the butcher buck.
Yeah.
That might be a new tactic. You go in there right before you set, and you just start hacking trees, limbs down.
Hacking limbs down, spit a little Copenhagen on the ground. All good.
Yeah. That's that whole story, guys, just shoots some of these. You meet some guys, and man, they won't even drive by their woods because they don't want to scent it up. And they're like pressure washing and bleaching and boiling their rubber boots and all this stuff. You guys, we hacked up some limbs, threw them on the ground, spit some Copenhagen on the pile, and called it good. And next thing you know, we're shooting a monster buck. So I like that's
Yeah.
So how'd the rest of the season turn out? Did that stand produce anything else for you guys?
The season was pretty much
It was-
done.
it was done.
It was done. Once Brian gets his deer, yeah, it's over.
Oh, it's
Season is done.
Okay.
Good thing I get to hunt in the backyard, but yeah, as Luke says, I'm a little picky on what lives and what gets put down. But I think you got to have some reservations in order to get some big deer.
yeah.
Yeah, I
You know-
went to the fence back at his place. So we wanted Brian to be cameraman, but he did get me out a few times, but it just didn't really pan out.
Yeah.
Some good hunts.
Yeah, we got some really good hunts out that same season, but yeah, just the big guy didn't quite give me a chance. So
Well, the
There's
big guy was there while you were at some gala event. So
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys
Yeah.
will never live that down now.
never, it will never happen. No.
yeah, I'm known as the gala guy.
I about
Yeah.
threw my softball glove.
Yeah. So that's next time I see your bow, I want to see a little picture of like a softball mitt sticker on your bow, and then you know what, you can put one of a tie, maybe even a bow tie. That'd be fitting.
Bow tie.
Yeah.
Bow tie.
And and Brian, you could just put like 321 in it, whatever the score was, because that's good
I'll
enough.
just put my arm around it.
Yeah, or like just a picture of that, whatever. So I think it's important to remember those types of things. So
And
what?
that's the hard. In 18, I put up 200. I thought, getting a 200-inch deer, good luck, boys. You're probably never going to get me.
Right.
And I didn't even get a year on the throne, and Brian puts up 320, and it was like,
Yeah.
that's not cool. I mean, you just
Oh, it's very
Where do you-
cool. It's unless you're competing with it, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
no, it couldn't happen to a better one. But yeah, you want at least a year on the throne, and I didn't get that.
Yeah. That's I can't imagine just you look at just the limited number of 200-inch bucks that get shot. If you're on Facebook, it happens like 7 times a day. But if you look at bucks that have an actual score sheet of over 200 inches, it's a pretty rare thing, and it's a special treat. And now all of a sudden, there's 2 bucks at 320, and that just blows my mind. I'm not even sure. I need a calculator. I'm pretty good at math, and I'd still need a calculator for that. That's just insane numbers.
Hey, don't worry about knocking a year on the throne, because Harv Ebers one time shot a world record moose, and not 4 days later, Fred Bear shot a new world record. So he said, I had the record for 3 days.
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing you guys talk about that story.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that.
3 days.
Yeah. It's at least he had it.
Yeah.
The only way I'm shooting a world record is if I go to the Mountain Archery Festival and shoot the Pope and Young course, man. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to a 300-inch buck.
It's because we shoot the 120s before the 300s get there, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Hey,
120.
Dylan,
That'd be nice.
when are you going to bring the Mountain Archery Fest into Flatland, Kansas Fest?
Brandon actually is talking a lot about moving east this year. He talked as close as Branson, Missouri. So that's only a couple hour, 4-hour trot for us. So that's the closest he mentioned. But just as much as they keep spreading out, hopefully they'll get even closer in the next few years. So
It's
That'd be cool.
So I gotta ask, guys, what's next? Who's gonna? You shoot a 200-incher, you don't really expect that to get beat, and now all of a sudden you got a 321. What's next? Where are you gonna go now?
I think Luke kind of started us off. Honestly, he shot 177 inch.
Yeah, it's in the books.
Nice buck.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. I mean, just the mass that you want. And then Clint goes and, here I go.
So it's back to me.
Yeah.
It's back to you. All right.
340,
Okay.
343.
I don't know if Luke will bring it up, but I think I might have shot his buck last year, maybe unintentionally, but we had a great buck on camera, and we built a zip line for Luke to get over there because the year before I told him he could get across in waders, and he proved me wrong.
Yeah, that didn't work out.
But we built a zip line to get across the creek so we could get into this hunting stand because you're kind of landlocked as far as you walk in, you're going to bust some deer going in, and then you've got the neighbor's property. So we did that.
So you built a zip line. So instead of busting deer walking through the woods, you're like, wee, wee, like zooming down a zip line.
No, you got to pull yourself over. It's the way back.
All right. Okay.
You get back to your truck, you can celebrate one hand.
It's a pretty cool. It goes right to the tree, and it is. I used a fiberglass pulley. It's surprisingly pretty darn quiet.
Wow.
You're right in there, and nothing, even no scent, no nothing.
That might be a new one. I don't think I've ever heard taking a zip line to the tree stand.
I have not.
I hook my hunting harness up to it and pull myself up, and just hand over, put my bow on my shoulder on my sling, and just pull myself right across. And then on the way back, I can just zip across.
That's the fun ride.
But yeah, it's a.
And how does that zip line work if you have a dead buck?
Well, if we got a dead buck, we're
okay,
driving the truck.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say you zip line back to the truck.
Okay, because I want to see that.
And at that point,
I want to see somebody like strapping one of these great big bucks these guys are killing. I want to see them like strapping that onto their harness and then like hand over hand back across the zip line with that.
Might be dipping your toes in the water with that weight.
Yeah.
I've heard of people hauling deer out with those e-bikes by putting the chest cavity on the seat and the chin on the handlebars and the hooves on the handlebars and riding them out of the woods. I'd like to see that.
I'm going to try that this year. Just got me a new e-bike.
I just got one too, and I just tried it out. And needless to say, I'm not the strongest bike rider in the group. So, that's why we got
e-bikes.
Man, I'm telling you, I haven't ridden a bike since I was like 11 or something. And now all of a sudden, I got this e-bike. I'm trying it out in the woods, and when you're on flat ground, it's pretty good. And then all of a sudden you start climbing this hill, and the first piece of sagebrush that hits your pedals, you start getting a little nervous and looking for a place to land. So fortunately I roll good. So when I hit the dirt, it was roll, popped right back up. And I looked around in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, man, I hope nobody saw that. So, but so I got to ask Here you are, Brian. Shoot this monster 321. How does it feel to do it literally right after Luke just shot his buck? Is there a little bit of, oh man, why couldn't it have been a little bit sooner? So you could have had your 3 days of the title.
I never even thought about that, honestly. I'm lucky to be here. I sit there and feel like I snuck in a party. Like I shouldn't be there. I just don't feel like, you go to convention and you see, so many guys in there that are just legends. And yeah, I feel like we snuck in the party.
Well, I'll tell you what, and it's, for me, I get to be around a lot of people in the industry, and it's truly, I really get a kick out of somebody like you guys. Obviously you're working hard. If you're putting up zip lines and you're trimming limb, you guys are doing it right. You're putting the effort in, which is why you're successful. But it's nice to see, what I consider guys like I would know be out there and getting it done and being successful, and, genuinely nice guys. And I'll tell you what, if you had to be in there right behind somebody else, Luke Brewster's just such a nice, genuine human being that's, if you had to be next, right behind somebody, that he's the guy you would want to be right there with.
Luke is deserving.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to meet him at the ATA show, like I said. And just the nicest guy you could ever imagine. And then we got to spend a little more time with him in Iowa. go to dinner, things like that. And then to run into him out there, I mean, we all three got to spend a lot of time with him. And I mean, it was just,
I don't know what he would say about us, but we sure like Luke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, don't worry.
We show up to dinner.
Yeah, we're going to have him in a couple weeks, and we'll find out exactly what he has to say about you three.
Yeah. Luke starts hanging out with us, and we tried telling him, come to dinner with us at convention. And we show up, and we're walking around looking for our table. And I'm sure he thought we were a bunch of clowns that shouldn't have been there.
Looking for table 70. Table 70 didn't exist.
Oh, no.
We were in the hallway.
You're out at the kids' table with me. So
You darn right.
Absolutely.
that's man, that's so great. So I mean, what's up next? You got this? Are you guys, going back? You concentrating on whitetails again to make it happen and find the big brother, or are you going to travel across the country and try out? What's next up?
He's going after the butcher bull. That's what.
Oh man, the butcher bull.
Yeah.
I want to see that thing.
Yeah,
I think we'd all love to get out after some elk. It's I think everybody struggles with time. I mean, we talked about going out there. We were out there last week getting some lanes trimmed, repairing some stands. But I mean, it's a different thing to go from hunting whitetails in Kansas, where you can go out for an afternoon, you can go out for a day, where
right.
you go out elk hunt, you're putting in 7 to 10 days, and it's a real crapshoot. I mean, I think we'd all love to, make that gamble and go for it, but it's just, maybe not in the cards this year, but we all keep talking about it.
We got to start putting in points, and
we'll get out eventually after elk, but whitetails in our backyard. It's what we can do, and it's kind of what we know as far as just experience. So
yeah, and then every once in a while we just shoot a 320, whatever, just like everybody's backyard.
We're pretty lucky to have what we have here in Kansas as far as what we do, the species we hunt. They, the turkey, the deer, the pheasant, the quail. Pheasant, quail, they're finally making a good comeback. Turkeys, they've been down. Our numbers have been down on the turkey, but hopefully people, conservation and things like that, flooding, predators, all that plays a big part. And the fact that coons and all those aren't worth a darn anymore. Those turkey, those land birds, they get hit hard.
Yeah. I was just scouting for antelope last weekend, and saw at first, I've spent quite a bit of time in the desert. It's the first time I've ever seen sage grouse. And I saw a couple different groups of them. So that was kind of a nice thing to see. I know they've put a lot of effort into those lately. So if you guys could pick, just going across the line, and I'll, Luke, we'll start with you. If you could pick one of the 29 species to go chase, which one would you pick?
It'd probably be elk.
Okay.
I've always wanted to chase elk. Just to chase, being on your feet and chasing after them, just hearing them screaming, and the adrenaline rush that I think that it would be, and just the hair standing up on your neck. I think that would just be the ultimate. That's a bucket lister for me. I'm always putting the kids to bed and watching shows and on YouTube and different hunt channels, and that's just something that I'd love to do.
It's being
a bucket lister for sure.
Yeah, being from the West.
I gotta do it before I'm too old.
Yeah, so. It's you guys talk about how good it is because you've got literally whitetails and pretty close to the house there, and for me, I grew up where I just happened to have blacktails kind of in my backyard, and then Roosevelt's are an hour west, and if I want to Rocky Mountains, they're an hour east, along with the mule deer. And so it's, for me, I was pretty fortunate to have several species just within a fairly close drive. So, but that's nice. And Clint, how about you? Which one are you going to pick?
God, I mean, elk could be, elk's a bucket lister. You see those big ram and big goats. To get out there and to get into that country and go through what you go through to get get to those animals, that would be hard. But I mean, I'd have to kind of go with Luke on the elk, man. You hear those things bugle, that would get your blood just boiling. And to get close, get on the ground 20, 30 yards from one of those, that would be an amazing feeling. And I think I say elk because that's probably my best chance for my next closest game, other than a muley, which going out western Kansas, and muley are awesome. I think I could take a muley every time I go pheasant hunting, but if I go out there with a bow, it'd probably be a different story.
Yeah. All right. And Brian, how about you? If you had to pick one, what are you going to pick?
I'd probably dream big and probably say a moose, because I think an elk is attainable, and I don't know that a moose is attainable at this point in my life. So
Jordan on dream big. Season 6 did it.
Yeah.
It's if
I'm really trying to get Jordan Jonas to convention next year, so we got to talk Jason into that.
That's a cool guy. I'd like to meet him.
Bad to the bone, man.
Yes, he is. Yes,
now, I don't know if you're following along. We're going to get sidetracked, Jason, to give me a second. I don't know if you're following along with Alone right now, but Clay Hayes is on it right now. And if you're not following along, I don't want to tell you what he did, but Clay Hayes is proven to be very successful as well. So hopefully he wins it too, because I've always enjoyed watching him and him making his own bows and stuff. So hopefully he does it too. Go ahead, Jason.
Those guys are awesome that can go out there and do that. It's easy to watch and think, I think I could, but God, you put yourself in that position, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, well, you tell yourself, you're like, well, I'm a pretty good hunter. I could probably do it. But you forget that you don't have time to hunt for the first 20 days because you're setting up shelters. And I mean, it's intense, man. Those guys are crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy when we just get to go hunt and just pay attention to hunt. But, yeah, when you're doing it because you're hungry, that's different.
Somebody the other day asked Aaron Snyder online if he would ever do it. And he said, no, I like coffee in Copenhagen too much to quit for
Sounds about right.
Well, they don't, you can't bring some of those shows you get to take one thing with you. It couldn't be like a case of Diet Dew or Uncrustables. Maybe some Uncrustables.
If you have unlimited Uncrustables, I'm in.
Oh, we're in.
You guys are sponsored by now, right? If we're talking about Uncrustables.
Well, they said, hey, you know what? We're thinking about sponsoring you guys. We like what you're doing with the Uncrustables. But, until you have somebody real big, and then we're like, we got Chuck Adams. We're like, who's that? And they said, if you had Brian Butcher or somebody like that, we could get behind you. So, yeah, that's going to be, as soon as this airs, that's going to be our next phone call. Uncrustables.
All right. All right. And so then we'll get that invitation up there to where you live and be close to the Tuleys and the Roosevelts and the Rocky Mountain.
Anytime. Yeah, because I let me tell you, I got some shooting lanes that would need to be cleared out.
So, I'll bring my buddies.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really in the hospital gala crowd, but I'm sure I could find you something. You mentioned moose, and I got to say that if you look at, that's one of those creatures. They're just immense. They're just huge. And if you look at the Yukons, they're not really accessible, and they're way up there, price wise and things, just because of where they're found. But some of those Alberta moose, the Canadian moose, are actually pretty. Those are doable. They're not outside of what you would consider like a doable type of trip. It's not a $20,000 trip like some people think it is. So I know I've been eyeing it. It just kills me because I go out and I talk to all these outfitters all year long, setting up these auctions for the hunts. And I'm just like, they're talking about their hunt. I'm just kind of drooling a little bit out of the corner of my mouth. They're talking about moose and brown bear. And, you get to deal with people, Steve Perrins up at Rainy Pass Lodge. And he's just such a nice guy. And you're just like, oh man, how cool would it be to experience that? And then you look at it and you're like, that's hard. That's, I'm sure it's well worth every nickel, but it's like, new truck or a hunt, you have to kind of balance that. But I think some of the moose hunts, even Newfoundland has some pretty, I think, doable hunts like that too. But
I was on a bear hunt in Maine, and my wife ended up staying. She didn't want to go out hunting after the first night. She saw bears, heard bears. She's like, nope, I'm out. They'll kill me. So she stayed. And anyways, one night they came back to pick me up, and my wife rode with the guide, and she said, Dylan, I saw a massive moose. And I'm like, yeah, they're all big. Like, cool. And the guide goes, no, it was 70 plus inches. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. And she pulled out her phone and she got video of it, of just an incredible moose. And that was the first time I'd ever been fired up to go moose hunting. Like when you see them in the woods and you see them like just doing their thing, I was like, oh crap, I need a moose hunt. Like they're phenomenal animals.
Yeah, it's I mean, realistically, I don't think there's any of the 29 I wouldn't like to chase. They're just and you see the ones at panel or at convention, well, panel and convention, you see those and they're just, man, every one is so cool and so unique, and just like you say, there's just not enough time to get after all of them. So
I've never seen a better display than at convention. I mean, that was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, everything from
all the species.
Isn't that shed hunting those moose?
Oh,
Clint's a big shed hunter, loves shed hunting. I imagine him finding a moose antler. I bet he'd be so excited.
Yeah,
that'd be one and back to the truck.
Yeah, the things weigh 80 pounds, man. You wouldn't be able to get them like you do deer. But
Jason, what would be your animal if you got to pick one?
Man, until I get a good elk's gonna be, I've shot some elk, but until I get the good one, I think I need to keep chasing those.
Yeah.
And right now I'm excited. I've got a couple of antelope hunts coming up, and so I'm pretty excited about those, because I'm like, I've got a really good shot at maybe not getting something to panel, but at least getting something, solid in the book. So right. So this year I'm going to say antelope and elk, and then who knows what next year brings? Maybe one of those moose. Now I'm just excited Canada's finally opening back up.
Yeah, that's good. Yep. It's going to be good.
Yeah. So guys, if you last time you suckered me in on this one. So if you had to make a second choice out of all the animals on that display at convention, what would your second choice be behind the butcher buck for which one you'd like to get?
Probably Brewster. That thing's beautiful.
Yeah.
Brewster's buck, amazing. But I mean, you say that and it's like you're giving us a blank slate.
Yeah.
You look at some of those moose. I mean,
I think the bison, to get one of those giant buffalo.
Oh yeah.
Who would that be? I mean,
that would be cool.
Wow.
And so I like, there's something really neat about the caribou too. Just, they've got all that massive, antlers sticking up there, and, points at the top and points at the bottom. I think there's something pretty neat about those as well. They just make a really beautiful trophy. So, and that,
I just want a drop time buck.
There you go. Yeah. So see, then you can go get a big drop tine buck, and then you look and you say, hey, Brian, look at mine. Mine's got drop tines. Yours just has that,
Well, they call this shot. But I certainly did not call my shot.
How do you call that?
That would, yeah, that's definitely. So is that what you're holding out for this year? You're not shooting unless it's got a drop tine?
Luke's not too picky.
No,
Okay.
It's to a default sometimes. We only get one buck tag in Kansas, so we gotta be very, very selective sometimes.
Tag suit don't taste too bad.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, that's the one thing. If you talk to the guys who are shooting these monster bucks, I grew up a little bit different. I mean, man, we went to deer camp and you were just flat there to hang some deer on the meat pole. That was the goal of deer camp. There was no, I mean, you wanted to shoot the big one, but you'd never pass, one of the smaller ones just in hopes that you'd find a bigger one. But it also wasn't, I mean, it was pretty crowded where we used to go. And so I look at talking to guys now, you talk to Alan Bolin and some of these guys who are shooting, world record animals. And that's the one thing they say is, hey, if you shoot this, you'll never get the big one if you shoot the small one. And so these guys are not afraid to eat a tag. And like you say, tag, tag soup's hard for me. I don't like to go without filling it. That's why
it's why
those
the does are for.
Yeah, that's why the fork and horns keep hitting my freezer.
Well, and Alan Bolin actually put out a video today on a ram sheep hunt, and he said this is like his 66th day sheep hunting, and he hasn't put a stock on one yet. He's like, and I've seen some giants. He's like, just not the one. And that's, I mean, it's a different mindset. It's a complete different hunt. I mean, when you go into it with that mindset, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And, he literally is holding out for top 5, and that's what he wants. So.
Yeah. Well, I talked to him, and his goal is to get all 29 species in the Pope and Young book that make Boone and Crockett. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, there's people hunt their entire life for one Boone and Crockett animal. Imagine trying to do that across the board. That's just, wow. So now where did yours fall B and C?
It's 4th.
Wow.
Yeah, 4th. And it's right. So what is it? The Missouri Monarch, the Hole in the Horn,
which were both found dead.
Yeah, the top 2 were both found dead.
So you're number 2 hunter taken.
The same as Pope and Young.
Okay, so
yeah,
so if we go out on a limb here and just say that bow hunters are, as far as non-typical whitetail go, bow hunters pretty much kicking everybody's butt right now. Is that?
It's cool, and I think what's cool about Pope and Young is, I mean, it's a different class. And I'm not trying to put myself there, but it's like when you go there and you meet other people, you just know you're on kind of the same level, in the sense that, I mean, I shot my deer last year with a rifle, so I'll be the first one to say that I'm not afraid to use a rifle. But yeah, I mean, when you want to compare animals, I mean, Pope and Young's, that's it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see that, because there's a there's a mystique to both, but Boone and Crockett, they just have higher minimums, and it's just, I don't know if it's harder to make their book, but it's maybe harder to find an animal that qualifies for their book, and then all of a sudden, it's a little not quite as hard if you're shooting it at 386 yards, but there's just not as many of those creatures roaming the hills as what the other minimums are. But it's exciting. We work with those guys very well, and in fact, we just this last week announced our joint measure manual, which we're pretty excited about. So instead of all the measures carting around 2 different books, now it's all in one place. So, well, guys, what's coming up next, because you've listened to the podcast and the question that we ask on every single podcast.
Probably going to let Luke lead off, and I'd love to steal his comment, but I've kind of come up with another one.
Something tells me they'll have good answers for us, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea what Clint's going to say, so we'll hold tight.
All right, Luke, we're going to start with you, man. What is one item, a non-traditional item, that you find yourself every time when you're out in the woods you can't live without?
Well, lately, I picked up getting a pocket full of milk thistle just to toss a little bit out and then to see, where my scent's going. And I think that seems like it works really good to see, sometimes it goes down, drops, and just takes off and loops back around you, and you don't even realize. But instead of, some people have the little squirter powder deal, but the real light milk thistle seed, that stuff works really good. So every now and then I'll toss a little bit out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really gonna get busted over in that side, or surprisingly, my scent's looping back around and going down the creek bottom, and so I gotta really be conscious of over there. So it's kind of amazing the way that stuff floats around, and I kind of imagine my scent doing the same.
You bet. So you're worried about scent unless you're like clearing shooting lanes and just throwing it in a pile with the Copenhagen. You know?
I do a lot of stand hanging too.
That's good.
I thought that was pretty interesting. That guy you guys had on in the past about how imagine your whole body is covered in paint when you're walking into the woods and you're getting wet paint every time you touch. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And your scent is doing the exact. That was pretty interesting.
Cuz
yeah.
Go to.
You know, when I'm especially elk hunting, I use the scent free stuff on everything, and I mean I hose myself down pretty good. And I was in a ground blind. This goes back a little ways, but I was in a ground blind, walked into this blind, and I saw a cow elk coming down, and literally right when she hit the trail that I'd walked in on, after I'd squirted myself down with everything, she didn't lift her head up and look around. She just took off and ran. And it's amazing. And this was probably an hour later. It's amazing how much they can pick up.
There's one other kind of unconventional thing I do after work. I get right off work and I throw my clothes in my scent crusher bag and fly out to Brian's and rushing for time. I'll strip down, jump in the creek, rub creek mud all over myself, and I just smell like a dirty old creek.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it
what do they call
anything else.
What do they call it? Yeah, so that's serious. What do they call it? Cajun seasoning in Kansas. Okay, so either some milk thistles or some Cajun seasoning in the creek. That's probably a little bit easier to do before you hit 32 degrees. So, all right, Clint, you're up next.
God, I can't say I've got much that most people don't take. I'm kind of a minimalist. I take my release, rangefinder, binoculars, my Copenhagen. I'd say that's probably my item that I take in that most people don't go into the woods with. But, long sits, you got to have a friend out there.
You take the snacks?
I don't bring food.
I don't chew, and I used to have a good buddy of mine, and every time we go hunting, I'd zoom it, we'd be getting fuel or whatever, and I'm like, you want anything? He's like, yeah, grab me a Diet Coke and a can of Copenhagen. And I'd always walk out with a bottle of Diet Coke for him, and I'd never buy him Copenhagen. But after your story about piling up the limbs and spitting a little Copenhagen on it, who knows, man? I might pick up a can, and I'm gonna say, you know what? It got the butcher buck. Can't hurt me.
Right. Somebody's just looking for a sponsor, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That's.
I want to keep my business.
All right. Well, we'll. You know what? Hey, Dylan, if Uncrustables doesn't come through, then we can talk to Copenhagen.
We need to make this question. We need to make this question presented by Uncrustables.
Yes, I think so.
The official tree stand snack of America.
You know what? I think we need to have a Pope and Young branded Uncrustable that has a wrapper that's quieter.
Now
that's the only drawback I've heard to Uncrustables in your blind bag.
Now we're talking.
That was the right one.
No, one time I got mad at my kids because they got in the fridge and they took the ones that were in the Ziploc bags rather than the Uncrustable bags. And I'm like, hey, who ate the Uncrustables? And they were like, I grabbed one for lunch, whatever. And I'm like, but you got one of the quiet ones. Yours are the loud ones. And my wife's like, you're really getting mad at them for eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I'm like, they ate the wrong ones.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's about river water and creek mud sand if you guys want in on it.
Yeah.
Has Butch ever told you about his deer dander theory?
Let's hear it.
What's deer dander?
Deer dander. You tell them about deer dander. He put about half a bottle on before old 320 hit the ground. Yeah, every hunt he hits himself with that stuff, and maybe a squirt or two might be natural, but 12 is not natural. It's pretty strong.
So, and
you ever heard of that, Jason?
I have. It's called deer dander.
Deer dander.
Deer dander.
It's like a deer.
like trying to attract them, but it mildly attracts.
It smells like you're
Big
riding on the
ones.
back of one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of stuff. I'm not familiar with that, but when a guy that just shot a 320 tells you about deer dander, but, yeah, I'm not sure if that's a real product or not, but people are going to be Googling it next week. So we better pop something up there, man.
It's real. It's real.
Just buy it early season.
I'm going to Google it right now.
Fellas, you're in.
Yeah. So is that
got that same bottle from like 4 years ago?
Yeah. So Brian, is that what you're going to lean on, deer dander? Is that the one thing you're taking with you in your pack?
I don't know. Maybe the one thing that helped me the most last year was I took a screenshot. There it is.
Yep, that's it. Old red label. Yep.
Wow.
Jake, you want me to have it shipped to your house or my house?
We'll send it to your house. You can try it out.
Okay.
Let me know how your
It's the
wife
best thing
feels
to put
about
on
that.
the bottom of your boots. I'll tell you that.
Is there only one
They'll follow
company that
you to
makes
your
it stuff?
stand. Yeah. Yeah, there are. Yeah. No, I took a screenshot of the hourly wind direction on my phone before my hunt last year because it was shifting a little bit and I don't get service where I hunt. Kind of thought that was a good one.
That is a good. All right. So yeah, if I was Brian, I'd take him. I think if I'd ever shot a buck like that, you know what I'd take in my pack? Like 2 tape measures in case you wear the first one out. That's what I'd take.
I didn't even know how to score that thing. I'll be the first one to tell you that. You want to talk about being clueless. That night we were cleaning it. We're sitting there just counting points and points. It wasn't until my boss got back to town on Wednesday before we scored it. And then it was, yeah.
I just kept getting more and more. Every time they counted, they'd find 10 more points.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and that's what I would have expected. And to have 3 different measuring crews go through that and be that close, it still blows my mind. I mean, you just don't expect it to be. I know those guys are amazing at what they do, but I mean, that's just to another level. That's to a level that you just wouldn't expect. So that's, man, I got to tell you guys, Brian, congratulations on a great trophy and also having some great buddies, man, because it sounds like you guys have a lot of fun. I know you were at convention because I was having fun with you. So
that's what it's all about.
That's exactly.
So we got to ask, did you win the softball game?
No.
It was in an end of season softball bonfire I was having at my house.
Oh my God. You weren't even playing?
It wasn't even a game.
We were drinking and throwing wood on the fire. I know.
All right. Over and out, Jason.
I'm telling you.
This is done up.
The only thing I'm trying to think back over 30 years of being in the outdoors. And I'm having a hard time coming up with anything that could even compete with, a softball bonfire while my buddy shoots a 320 whitetail. The only thing that I've heard that's probably that might be that ridiculous, Clint, is years ago, and I'm not even sure. I'd have to Google what year it was, but years ago, I was chairing a Ducks Unlimited dinner. And a whole 2 tables of our best people work for a car dealership in Junction City. And 2 of the tables of our best supporters kind of canceled at the last minute because they said, oh, that's the same night as the Seinfeld, finale episode. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
With Seinfeld?
Yeah. So that's how far back I have to find something as ridiculous as a softball party.
Bonfires are usually a pretty good time, but yeah, I don't know if I've enjoyed myself with Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But
so next time hunt till dark, then you start the fire. Because fires are good after dark. They're even better after dark, after legal shooting time. So that's my word of advice to the guys who are all out there killing monster bucks. So from the guy who's not. Well, guys, hey, thanks so much for being on the show. I knew we were going to have a good time, and I sure did. I appreciate it. It was great to meet you at convention. I hope you're making it back to Reno in 23. We've got some plans for that one to be even bigger, even better. And I hope you've got another one there on display. That would just tickle me. So
good luck with your podcast in the future. Hope it looks like it's going great.
Need all the luck we can get.
Hey, I appreciate you guys listening, man. That was one of the coolest things that happened to me at convention was, hey, we listen to your podcast. I'm like, yeah. That was pretty great, you know? And now that I think you actually meant it, so that's even better.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So, guys, hey, congratulations on everything. It just, I can't wait to see. And, you know, the other thing is you got a video coming out on this thing, a film that they did of the process. What's the update on that?
So it's called Buck Fever. At least that's the plans of it now. And it's really close to be, you know, getting buttoned up. They're trying to send the last bits because they had sent everything to an editor before convention, but obviously we had convention and then there was a few weeks of stuff before that. So they're going to try to wrap that up. The idea is it's kind of the journey through the process. I don't think anybody's ever kind of done this, but met a film crew through friends of friends within a week after shooting that buck, and they kind of went through everything with me, and I was lucky enough to bring these two guys with me. But whether it was going through the scoring process or going to conventions, things like that, it's just kind of a firsthand view as far as, you know, what happens if you shoot, you know, a potential world-class animal.
Yeah.
And so we're working on that. Hopefully they'll get it out to one of the streaming shows. They seem pretty confident. But if you check out Buck Fever Film on Facebook, they'll be putting out some updates on that.
Excellent. Well, when that hits, you let us know. We'll put it everywhere. We'll let everybody know about it.
Awesome.
So
appreciate it.
Well, guys, hey, I'm excited to see it because I know we had some parts of it with convention and also with panels. So I'm excited to see it. And now that I know, you know, man, I met Brian Butcher. So
the luckiest guy.
You know, that's so great. So guys, thanks so much for being here. Had a great time, and best of luck this upcoming season. We'll do it again with your next 320.
All right. You got it.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.